Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. That's right, we are back again, and this time with a controversial clan. Not controversial to you, I'm sure. I imagine you absolutely love this clan. Controversial to me. Clan Malkavian. As you have been able to see from the title of this video, and I'm sure the thumbnail as well, the Malkavian clan, the clan of the moon, the clan of lunatics, the clan of derangements. Controversial to me, because my relationship with the Malkavians has changed hugely since I started playing Vampire the Masquerade. Why am I making a video about a clan I find controversial? Well, this time it isn't the same old story of someone backed the world below for a physical copy and requested a video. No, this time someone had already backed a copy of the world below in physical form and messaged me through MatthewDawkins.com, my website, and said, I'd really like a video on the Malkavians, but I already have the world below. Would it help if I purchased a copy of Curseborne? And I thought, why have I not been asking people to do this? I said, you know what, if you pick up a copy of Curseborne, the deluxe edition with the slipcase, and you pick up a copy and you pick up some dice with it, I'll make you a Malkavian video this week. And so that is what we are doing, because they did that very thing. And it's what I want to encourage you to do right now, before we start getting into the trenches of the world of darkness again. Curseborne has less than a week to go on Kickstarter. This is what that backer said when they checked it out. They said it really looks like an alternative to the world of darkness. It is an alternative to the world of darkness. It's also a complement to the world of darkness. You don't have to give up one to play the other. You can easily pull from each to feed into your own game. If you enjoy horror, if you especially enjoy urban horror, if you love the works of Stephen King and David Lynch and Mike Flanagan and other such creators who I've been talking about on this channel, you're going to absolutely love Curseborne. It has an established team of horror writers behind it, including myself, who all have a lot of tenure on World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, and other games. It is a beautiful book, and there are so many playable options, and there's so much depth hidden in that game, and the game line itself is going to expand and expand so that the entire world of the Accursed is going to become a big playground for you. There is less than a week left to go, so what I would like to ask you to do, and this is my big favour to you right now, or to ask of you right now, is I appreciate not everyone has the money to back a project or wants to pick up a hard copy or a role-playing game right now, and that's fine. But if you haven't clicked on the Kickstarter yet, please take this moment, that video description below, the first line has a link in it. Just click on it. Check the campaign out. And if it interests you, back for a PDF only. It will make a huge amount of difference, because we're in the last week. We want to hit as many stretch goals as we can. And if you like my work, if you like these videos, you like the things I have to say about horror and RPGs, you are going to love Curseborne, and I would love it. I'd be personally grateful to you for giving this game your backing. So please, before we move on, click that link, have it open in another window, and then consider strongly giving it your support, and I'll appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now the Malkavians. Yes. I don't think I've ever expressed before that the first ever character I played in Vampire the Masquerade was a Malkavian. A very awful character. I'm sure most people's first character for any role-playing game is something they look on with regret, especially when they're in their late teens. For me, yeah, my character was all edge, no point, and yeah, lacking maturity and sensitivity. Probably because at that time I was lacking maturity and sensitivity. I'm sure most late teens, early 20s role players are lacking both of those traits. I like to think so. I also like to think I've grown up a little and won't play a character like this again. By all means, I am not adverse to putting gross out horror, sexual horror, anything like that in an RPG. If you've ever listened to any of my actual plays of Cult Divinity Lost for Red Moon Roleplaying, you will know I am no stranger to these elements in gameplay and storytelling. But my first Malkavian character was a priest with a choir, and they were his herd, and he had a sexual derangement where he preyed upon them in more ways than one. I was really just a prick. And thankfully, that character met final death in about 2 sessions, so it worked out all right. And then I played my first Ventrue, and that character was a lot more sober and allowed me to actually get into the game a lot better. But ever since I first got into Vampire the Masquerade, I was always attracted to the idea of the Malkavians because they felt like a fringe clan. They felt like a clan that was on the outside looking in. They were never invited to the big parties. They were never taken seriously. And so to a kid that wasn't necessarily the most popular, who was often bullied, who was on the edge, someone like me, I felt very drawn to the Malkavians in the same way a lot of people were drawn to the Nosferatu for that reason, or the Bruja for that reason. And indeed, it fed into, and it still does, the way I see the, I guess, archetypal Camarilla. There's only 2 clans really at the top of the Camarilla, and that's the Ventrue and the Toreador. Every other one of the 5, Bruja, Malkavian, Nosferatu, Tremere, and did I mention Gangrel? Probably not. Are on the edge. They aren't the top dog as much as they would like to be. They're all too focused on their own thing. But what is the Malkavians' thing? Well, for the longest time, and I'll use the term that appears in previous editions of Vampire the Masquerade, it's their derangements. They are a clan defined by mental illness. And that has provoked a lot of problems I've experienced in gameplay, whether it's as a storyteller or as a player, mainly because you can't rely on players to just automatically be learned, mature, or sensitive when it comes to portraying mental illness. I think that there is one particular book that does it incredibly well, and that's Clanbook Malkavian Revised. I think it is a fantastic book for teaching players how to portray characters with derangements in a serious, tragic way, actually play up the horror of mental illness, and that ties into the whole concept behind Malkavians, that people who were suffering from mercury poisoning or rabies may have been going around biting people and were called vampires and thrown into asylums because they were mad. This is where the Malkavian idea comes from. As all of the original clans have some kind of genesis point in vampiric mythos. The Malkavian one is fairly weak, but that's their origin. But my issue with the Malkavians that I guess caused my love for them to turn into apathy and then into antipathy. If you like to follow a religious metaphor, for a while I was a deist. I strongly believed in the Malkavians. Steadily became atheistic. I frankly did no longer believe in them and didn't care to play them. And then I became an anti-theist where I actually disliked other people for playing them because I could see the ways they were portraying them. Luckily, I've recovered from that rather spiteful attitude in the last decade or so. But I think that the prime reason for that is one of their most popular presentations, which is in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Now, Bloodlines is a lot of fun, and as they say, when you mention it, someone will reinstall it. Well, I hope you do. It's a janky piece of crap game with a very good first level. I know that won't win me many fans. But all the mods that have been created for it do make it a lot better. But I still think they primarily make the first level, maybe the first 2 levels, a lot better. The issue is how the Malkavians in this video game are represented, I should say. I think there's Dr. Grout, who never really appears, and that is a true derangement into horror story, which works. And there's also Jeanette and Therese, or Tourette as they're sometimes called, which I can frankly take or leave appropriately enough, where you've got this character who is 2 characters in one. We don't have to worry about spoilers at this point. If you're watching a video about the Malkavians, you've probably encountered Jeanette and Therese. Now, I think that presentation, that representation of a Malkavian isn't totally awful, but I think it does very much reduce a serious mental condition to a rather exploited way of looking at it. Honestly, I don't have a huge problem with that, because I appreciate this is a game. This isn't serious. This isn't real life. We're not on stage and we're trying to convince people that we're one thing or the other. So Jeanette and Therese I don't really have an issue with. I think I've seen far too many players play characters like that, but I get it because it's appealing. My problem is the protagonist. If you're playing a Malkavian protagonist, you're going around having funny chats with stop signs, you've got wacky font, and you're going to be going up to people and you're going to be getting kooky with their minds and making them do embarrassing things because your character is Joker-like or Harley Quinn-like. And I am so bored of that concept. I'm so bored of seeing people play that. It is only a small gradient removed from what was classically referred to as a fishmouth for reasons you can look up on the White Wolf wiki, but they became intolerable to me, those kind of Malkavian characters, to the point that I no longer wanted to see people playing Malkavians in my games. I just no longer trusted people to play Malkavians in my games. And I think it was partly a symptom of that resulted in when I wrote Malkavians for V5, because I wrote them for the core book, that I almost divorced them entirely from the idea of Malkavian as mental illness. It was instead leaning on Malkavian as seer, prophet, oracle, Malkavian as receiving visions through the vitae, through the blood. Because I like to tie a vampire's bane, their weakness, their curse, what have you, to metaplot, to lore in the game. I know this is something V5 is moving steadily away from, but my preference is the idea of the Malkavian's vitae is more volatile than that of other clans. It isn't that it's stronger, more potent, it's more volatile. That there is some consciousness spread about them, which may well be their antediluvian, or could be a series of Methuselahs that were diablerized. But whatever the case, much like with the Tzimisce mutating its childer and grandchilder through its whims, Malkav is getting into the blood of all of his descendants and making them suffer visions, making them see alternate versions of the present, making them get to a crime scene and see how everything comes together in the style of many a TV show since. That is my preference, because I like to go back to that Camarilla scene of 2 on top, 5 on the bottom. The Malkavians are on the fringe, but they are called in for a specific purpose, much like the other clans. If all they are is pariahs, if all they are is an albatross around the neck of other vampires, all suffering with their respective conditions, I think that they are less interesting than if they serve a useful purpose, justifying their position in the Camarilla and why they're in this elite society. And it is because as counsellors, there are few more valuable. So the Ventru Prince occasionally pulls the Malkavian out from the shadows and says, "Seer, what do you see? You know, what is the secret that's being held from me?" And the Malkavian is able to gain those sights. Now, whether that comes through Auspex or whether that comes through Storyteller Fiat, which I actually prefer, I like the idea that just like if you're playing a Tremere, when you encounter other Tremere, there's going to be some kind of blood obligation aspect to the plot. When you're playing Malkavian, there should be some kind of foresight, should be some kind of being able to see the past or the future or someone's true intentions just by looking at them or looking at a crime scene. It implies that there is a power inside you, but sometimes that power compels you to do things. Sometimes that power forces you to experience blackouts and you can't remember the horrible things you did. It makes playing a Malkavian a lot more fun for me, and I think they are the perfect clan to apply that kind of narrative weight to. I think you can apply narrative weight to every single clan, almost every single clan, through a lore respect, but the Malkavians, it is a really good weapon for the storyteller to use and for the player to enjoy. It gives them a mystery right off the bat to play with, and I think that's a lot of fun. Again, your mileage may vary. I think the idea as well, because in the Tzimisce video I made a reference to how I would change the Bane. As time has gone on, I've wanted to divorce the Malkavians from mental illness more and more, and it isn't just because I find their representation in games egregious. quite the contrary, I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of players and fans of the World of Darkness who are attracted to the Malkavians because they see themselves in the Malkavians for one reason or other, and I'm not going to take that away from anyone. I sometimes remark that if I could delete a clan, it would be the Malkavians, but it's because of how they are sometimes represented in a stereotypical or frankly shit way. What I would want to do is, instead of having them have to roll to resist succumbing to their derangement, because I don't like taking agency away from players, I would play again on the volatility of the blood. Have it that they are more unpredictable. I've always been a fan of paradox backlashes in Mage. I've always been a fan of wild magic effects in AD&D. This is why in the world below you have your Chaos Sorcerers with chaotic retaliations. I'd be looking for something like that in the Malkavians, that whenever you use a discipline, there is a possibility for a secondary effect if your Bane is ready to go off, essentially. You have to roll for it to not happen, or because you're of a certain blood potency or what have you, it will always happen. Now, this isn't going to be a secondary effect like a sudden storm or a cow manifests into being. It will be something like you, as well as getting into the head of the person you're trying to dominate, you are also going to instill them with some kind of mental illness or sudden anxiety attack or something like that. It is that you're going to meddle with the emotions unpredictably. It basically means that while a Ventru or a Tremere can dominate with a scalpel, you dominate with a hammer, or more likely a stake tenderizer or a flamethrower. And so yes, you might remove the cancer, but you're also going to sear the brain around it when you do so. I like that idea of playing into the unpredictability of Malkavian power, that they are incredibly powerful, but also, like dynamite, they can go off at any point. So, yeah, my relationship with the Malkavians has changed over time, and the more I reapproach them, the more I look at how I would do them differently, the more I can see the V5 and the way they're presented is my presentation of the Malkavians. And that isn't going to be for everyone. In some ways, I regret that because, and maybe, I think you can do it with every edition of Vampire in truth. You could look at Vampire the Masquerade Revised and look at all those sidebars next to Bloodlines that say, do not play this is storyteller only, or if you play this, you're a fool. And I hated that. Hated it as a reader. And in V5, I think you can very easily see, or I can very easily see because I worked on it, the clans and I guess Bloodlines through lore sheets that are writer inserts. This is where we have tried to impose our view on how you should play. Now, there's a risk there. If you go that defined, you're going to disenfranchise people who love the original concept. But if you make it too broad, you're going to end up not providing any kind of definition at all. So maybe I can only identify this because I wrote it, and hopefully it's not a bad thing. But I would really love to hear from you about your favourite Malkavian character concepts. And I don't want to hear about your Jokers. I don't want to hear about your Harley Quinns. I want to hear about some interesting Malkavian character concepts. And I also, in those same comments, I'm not going to respond to your comment unless you say whether you have backed Curseborne or not. Because if you haven't, after I've made all these videos for you, I will use my dementation 5 dots on you. And you will see what happens. Not much, because I don't have many points in empathy or perception. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will speak to you again next time.